One airplane accident didn't just end a flight, it rewrote aviation rules worldwide. New laws, new designs, new safety systems. And yet, most passengers today have no idea why flying is safer, or what it costs to get there. This isn't just a story about a crash. It's the story of how aviation was forced to confront its own weaknesses, and in doing so, build the safest transportation system in human history. The next time you step onto a plane, remember this moment, because the silent, invisible systems keeping you safe were born from a disaster that exposed a fatal flaw nobody saw coming. In the early days of commercial aviation, the sky was the limit, literally. Flying was expanding at an incredible pace. Planes were getting bigger, carrying more people, and flying longer routes than ever before. Every year, passenger numbers soared. It was a golden age of growth and innovation. But behind this exciting expansion, safety regulations were struggling to keep up. Many aircraft designs were approved based on theoretical models and calculations, not on what would happen during a real-world failure. The industry was moving so fast that it was outrunning its own understanding of the complex systems it was creating. This environment, full of ambition and optimism, was also unknowingly setting the stage for a catastrophe. Engineers believed they had built in enough redundancies, and authorities trusted the designs on paper. They assumed that if one thing failed, another would kick in. But they hadn't accounted for a scenario where a single, seemingly minor issue could trigger a cascade of failures so confusing and so rapid that even the best pilots would be rendered helpless. The system was more fragile than anyone knew. Before the catastrophic event, there were whispers of a problem, small clues that were tragically overlooked. Across the fleet, small technical issues would pop up. Maintenance logs noted unexplained malfunctions that seemed to resolve themselves. Pilots reported confusing cockpit alerts warnings that would flash for a moment and then disappear, or alarms that seemed contradictory. None of these incidents were dramatic enough on their own to ground an entire fleet of aircraft. They were dismissed as isolated quirks, minor bugs in a complex system. In hindsight, they were the warning signs, the faint tremors before the earthquake. Each report was a piece of a puzzle that no one was putting together. The industry's focus on individual component reliability meant they missed the bigger picture, how these components interacted under stress. The system was communicating its weakness, but nobody was listening. It was only a matter of time before one flight would experience all these minor issues at once, exposing the fatal flaw for the entire world to see. Then came the flight that changed history. It was a routine trip, just like thousands of others that day. Passengers were settling in, flight attendants were preparing for service, and the pilots were running through their standard procedures. But deep within the aircraft's complex systems, a chain reaction of failures began. There was no sudden explosion, no dramatic mid-air breakup that you see in movies. It was something far more subtle and sinister. One overlooked design weakness, a single point of failure, began to trigger multiple, seemingly unrelated system alerts all at once. The cockpit, once a place of calm control, was suddenly flooded with a cacophony of alarms and flashing lights. The pilots had only seconds to diagnose a problem that engineers hadn't even conceived of. They were trained professionals, but the scenario unfolding before them wasn't in any training manual. The plane was fighting them, and the very systems designed to keep them safe were now overwhelming them with conflicting information. They couldn't regain control. The immediate shock across the industry was profound. The aviation world froze. When news of the crash broke, it wasn't treated as just another tragic accident. Something was different this time. Airlines grounded their fleets. Engineers scrambled, poring over blueprints and data, trying to understand what could have gone so wrong on a routine flight. Airlines and the public demanded answers, and it quickly became clear this wasn't a case of pilot error. The crew had been caught in an impossible situation created by the machine they were flying. This realization sent a shiver down the spine of the entire industry. It was a design failure, a fundamental flaw in an aircraft that had been certified as safe. The implications were terrifying. If this top-of-the-line aircraft had such a critical vulnerability, what other dangers were lurking, undiscovered, in other planes flying all over the world? The accident pierced the industry's bubble of confidence and forced a painful public reckoning. The investigation that followed shook the foundations of modern aviation. Investigators painstakingly pieced together the final moments of the flight, analyzing flight data recorders, cockpit voice recordings, and the wreckage itself. They uncovered a terrifying truth. A single, small flaw could create a cascade of failures that would overpower a highly trained crew and overwhelm all the built-in safety redundancies. The systems meant to be backups were instead contributing to the chaos. This discovery forced aviation authorities to ask a hard, uncomfortable question. What else are we missing? It was no longer enough to just analyze the one thing that broke. They had to start thinking about how systems interact, how pilots react under extreme stress, and how a cockpit can be designed to provide clarity instead of confusion during a crisis. The investigation revealed that the industry had become overconfident in its technology, assuming that layers of safety systems were foolproof. This crash proved that assumption wrong in the most devastating way possible. What followed was nothing short of a safety revolution. This single crash became the catalyst for the most significant changes in aviation safety history. It wasn't about blaming individuals. It was about fixing the system. The findings led to mandatory redesigns of cockpit warning systems, ensuring that alerts are prioritized and clear, not confusing. A new type of training, known as crew resource management, became standard. It taught pilots, flight attendants, and even maintenance crews to communicate more effectively and work as a cohesive team, especially during emergencies. New regulations demanded more robust protections for redundant systems, making sure that the failure of one component couldn't bring down others with it. Certification standards were completely overhauled. From that point on, manufacturers had to prove not just that individual parts were safe, but that the entire aircraft was resilient to complex, cascading failures. Many of the fundamental rules that govern aviation today exist as a direct result of the lessons learned from this one tragic event. So why does this matter to you? Because every flight you take today is built on the lessons learned from failure. Every alarm you don't hear because a system worked correctly. Every checklist a pilot diligently follows. Every emergency procedure they practice relentlessly. They were all written in response to accidents like this one. Flying didn't become the safest mode of transport by chance or by hoping for the best. It became safer by correction, by painstakingly analyzing every incident and using that knowledge to build a better, stronger system. The safety of modern aviation is a testament to the engineers, investigators, and regulators who are willing to confront a terrible truth and dedicate themselves to making sure it would never happen again. The legacy of that flight is not the tragedy itself, but the revolution in safety that it inspired. In the end, it was one crash, one horrifying realization that forced an entire industry to change its path. Instead of repeating history, aviation chose to learn from it. It's a powerful reminder that progress often comes from our most difficult moments. The next time you're looking out an airplane window at 30,000 feet, take a moment to appreciate the invisible web of safety that surrounds you. It's a legacy paid for by the past, protecting our future. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world.